I can't believe it. Forget JDM or KDM, we might be witnessing the start of CDM. So if you aren't caught up, the BYD Yang Wang U9 Extreme Hypercar just hit a 308 mph top speed. Even though it is not officially recognized as the fastest production car, it is because there are not 25 models of these cars yet. A lot of the sources that I have read, however, indicate that the speed was properly verified by credible GPS companies and that the test was held in the same course that Rimaat's Bugatti and Koenigsegg's regularly test on as well. BYD does plan on building 30 of these, but they have to build them sooner than later because if they aren't built in time before either Bugatti or Koenigsegg get a chance to pass the 308 mph mark, there's a chance that BYD might not be the official world's fastest car if Bugatti can beat them in the meantime, is what I'm saying. Speaking of power, I still should mention that this is really impressive because the BYD Yang Wang U9 does make almost 3,000 horsepower, 2,978 in specific. While its top speed is impressive, its Nurburgring time is still half a minute behind the fastest gas car, but it is a sub 7-minute run, making it the fastest EV around the Nurburgring, beating out the Rimaat's Navara at 7-minute 5 and the Xiaomi SU7 at 7-minute 4. Speaking of the Xiaomi, their SU7 4-door sedan just put down a faster quarter mile while consistently matching the 0 to 60 of the mighty Tesla Plaid. It accomplishes this amazing feat for a significantly lower price point than the Tesla, basically half the cost at 55 grand after converting it from Chinese yuan. I don't think me stating the price really even matters because it's not like us Americans will ever actually see this car in our country because we have a petty ban on Chinese automobiles. Because why should we compete and innovate with foreign competition when we can just ban them instead? Am I right, fellas? Yeah, that went super well for Harley. Let's deploy that exact same strategy with cars. That totally won't make them fall behind. Trust me, I'm gonna touch on that later this video. I will admit that the Xiaomi had some overheating problems with successive runs, and for some reason, despite it being a press car sent to benchmark against America's best, Xiaomi for some reason had restrictors on it until it was taken off. So I don't know if they did that for like drama, like, ooh, let's like sandbag on them and make them think it's slower, and then boom, the restrictors go off. I gotta rightfully criticize it because obviously if I'm gonna gas up their car and make fun of Tesla, it's only fair that I do say the truth of, hey, the Tesla performed great in terms of 0 to 60 runs and consistent straining, but it's overall at its best, at its peak, does actually lose to the Xiaomi when the stars align. And I think that's something that is important to say because I totally loathe the cope of what everyone keeps saying when they see this result of just, well, actually, it's not like we need that much speed anyways, so who cares about top speeds in 0 to 60s or quarter miles? The Tesla's already good enough, you know, it's already fast enough. And I keep seeing this as like the #1 defense regarding both of these Chinese EVs' success, and whenever Americans have to address it, this is just kind of sad. I consider myself a huge patriot, but I've never seen such an obvious display of jealousy and just shoving our tail between our legs until this moment. Like, you know, this is peak Psych 101 of just a super obvious display of jealousy, right? Like, oh, if I can't beat it, I'm just gonna belittle my opponent's accomplishments. That's something like 4-year-olds do, right? Also, it's super hypocritical because didn't these fanboys literally brag non-stop about Tesla 0 to 60s for a decade straight and how EVs totally destroy hypercars? Like, all of a sudden, it's not so fun when you're on the receiving end of it. Ooh, when you no longer have the faster car. Ooh, it doesn't feel so good. Like, I feel people who are using this cope have completely missed the point because if you want to push the peak of EV performance, you have to chase brand new heights for them, which means breaking these records, which means doing these quote-unquote unnecessary things because it's just like working out. You push yourself past a limit, which in turn actually raises your baseline. Baseline EVs and the everyday user's cars will benefit from better battery density, better EV performance and capabilities, and everything else that we've learned in the pursuit of pushing a peak. This is true of even regular cars. Did you know almost every single safety feature that even exists we added to cars because of racing. All of that growth that we've been wanting from EVs, that was the thing that was limiting them from beating gas cars, which was battery weight, power density, range, and so on, and even top speed. That was actually something that was talked about, even if it is quote unquote useless, because again, pushing peak, raising baseline, come on, please understand. This type of stuff doesn't fall from the sky. It's born from competition and innovation. And part of me thinks that Tesla fanboys never actually cared for the greater of EV kind or even Earth's future, but rather was just a selfish jerk-off session to being #1 bragging rights. But you guys do realize you can still be #1, right? Like, just acknowledge China, set them as a benchmark and beat them. Actually stare them down as an opponent. Why are we doing this coping and jealousy and tail between our legs stuff? This showcased China's continued dominance as an EV automaker that can actually push boundaries, and I'm starting to feel somewhat ashamed that my own country is just banning them instead of competing directly with them. That is literally the coward's way out, just running with our tail between our legs. I asked earlier this year, dearest Elon, where is the Tesla Roadster? You've been promising it for like 8 years now. We need it now more than ever, and if anything, it even needs multiple trims at this point, because I imagine the base model has not even come close to a remods, much less this new Wang. We are so late to the party of EV supercars, much less EV hypercars, that I'm wondering if the United States is ever actually going to show up to this party at all. Like, huge shout out to Hennessy and even SSE, because regarding non-EVs, both of them are still trying their best to stay in the top speed game, even in spite of their past controversies. It's also really sad that we have to rely on smaller independent tuners. God bless them, but like, they're representing American hypercars. Oh, Celine did too, and Celine also started off as a tuner. So like, it's crazy that none of the multi-billion-dollar companies want anything to do with hypercars. Before someone says, well, it's not like that's true for foreign manufacturers. Wrong. Bugatti obviously has Volkswagen's assistance, and obviously Wang in this case has BYD's assistance. So like, why isn't Ford or GM ever pitched in? The rise of CDM. Regarding JDM and KDM, I don't really have any negative words for them, but it is rather obvious that JDM is long past their golden age, which was in the 90s. But a silver age has swung back around. It's cool that for a period of time we had the Supra, Nissan GTR, and NSX all back together in simultaneous production 20 years later, but now the NSX and GTR dipped once again. Thankfully, the Supra won't be alone. We do have a rotary on the horizon, as well as a V8 Lexus supercar. So massive W, Japan will be re-entering the supercar game. As for now, the Type R and Nissan Z are still going strong, so I don't want to be negative anyway. JDM is not over, it's still kind of in a silver age. KDM meanwhile is on the up and up. Hyundai, Genesis, and Kia are still doing better each year. Like, I would be lying if I said they aren't improving. Like, I think they're gonna catch up to Japan. Korea's demographics does worry me and their political leaders and everyone in the nation, and really the rest of the world too, including the United States, because that's a really complex way of saying they ain't making enough babies and you can't succeed as a country when there's no more citizens left in your country. It really should have hit me sooner that China was going to be the next leader, not just for the Asian automotive industry, but probably the entire world's automotive industry. All my life, I'm absolutely guilty of thinking that all China would ever do is just be a copycat nation that just reproduces other people's technology. However, it doesn't take a genius to realize that if you copy something long enough, not only will you understand how it's made, but you'll even understand how to eventually make it better. Some of the greatest inventors in history were not the first ones to invent the actual item that became popular. Think of Thomas Edison and the light bulb. Here's an even funnier one for all the car guys watching. Who invented Lambo doors? You know, the iconic scissor doors found on all Lamborghinis? Sounds like a joke question, right? Of course it must be Lamborghini, that's why it's called Lambo doors. No, it's Alfa Romeo. If you knew that, cool. However, the majority of people watching this video are going to continue calling them Lambo doors, thus proving the point that I'm making, that the first to do something in history does not guarantee that they're actually going to be the one remembered in history. Tesla fanboys may swoon over Elon's accomplishments this past decade because admittedly, he was one of the first companies to bring EVs to true mass marketability, and that is something he's achieved. Whether that's remembered half a century from now is up to him and how he acknowledges BYD as a competitor. At the rate we're going, BYD will be in the history books, not Tesla. Hypercar, that's what sells dreams. That's what makes the next generation remember them. Doesn't matter if there's only going to be 30 of them made. Doesn't matter if all the kids who grew up watching the hypercar end up growing up and buying sedans and SUVs. The memory, the dream, the pride of the nation, that is worth all of its weight in gold. And again, the technology trickles down. If a company can make a 308-mile-an-hour hypercar, you know they can make any other car as good as they want to. I do feel a desire to root for American companies, but so many of them are just too hyper-focused on squeezing pennies out of their customers, making these dumb subscription services, and making planned obsolescence and unreliable garbage, and they just don't see the bigger picture. Where did our fighting spirit go? The United States used to be cool, like super awesome. We landed on the moon, we had the coolest fighter jets, the best supersonic nuclear bombers, insane mythical legends like the Valkyrie and the SR-71. Tying this back to topic, supercars and hypercars are not so-called unnecessary displays of technology, especially when literally everyone in the US basically is forced to drive because of car dependency. So having peak advancements in automotive technology will trickle down to base level grocery getters even though the average person buys SUVs, crossovers, and sedans, the dream car that defines each generation is always a supercar or hypercar. They represent a company's prowess and even country's pride. There's a reason a McLaren F1 is worth $25 million, but an SUV from the 90s is probably going to depreciate to dust. I don't know a single car company or country of origin that pedestalizes an SUV or crossover. It is always their domestic supercar that they take pride in. For instance, Ford doesn't even make any cars these days other than the Mustang, and while their website is still littered with crossovers after crossover, the Ford GT is the one that still leads the pack in almost all of their promotional photos. It is the one that they made a literal movie after. Supercars are cultural icons. That's just a reality of life. We are fascinated by the extraordinary because it makes us, the ordinary, feel more empowered. We pass by weeds, but we revere roses. Living or otherwise, the most captivating showcase of power and potential is always the most extraordinary display of it. Supercars and hypercars showcase this is what our company can make when we're functioning at our absolute peak, and you bet that after pursuing this peak, we've learned so much that all of our baseline will also raise. Like, if you think about it, that's even what working out is fundamentally. Like, fundamental basis of improving anything in life is you work towards your peak, which by proxy raises your baseline. And boy, China is soaring right now, and I can't help but stare in awe. I have to acknowledge their accomplishments, and I deeply still believe that the US has some ounce left in them to respond back meaningfully. It doesn't matter that only 30 of these Yang Wongs will exist. That's 30 more than what Tesla has regarding their mythical roadster. Apologies to bring up motorcycles again, but there are a lot of parallels between American car and American motorcycle culture. We saw the same thing happen to Harley Davidson with Ronald Reagan. Harley Davidson begged on their knees for Reagan to help ban stiff foreign competition, or at least regulate those European and Japanese bikes.
You asked us to give you breathing room so you could finish getting into shape to meet unexpectedly strong foreign competition.
That breathing room amounts to a 49% tariff on imported bikes over 750 cc's. It fences off Harley's core market, keeps it uncontested.
What ended up happening was Harley just got lazy for a couple decades because they didn't need to innovate anymore. However, those companies just didn't disappear. They actually started to work around the restrictions and ended up making more efficient vehicles in spite of the restrictions. It got to the point where a lot of those companies didn't care about the big displacement motorcycle tariffs anymore because they could make a lower displacement motorcycle that made the same horsepower as a Harley that didn't innovate in the same time period, because again, they were protected from the competition. To put this into perspective for people who don't know much about motorcycles, I will never stop clowning on Harley for churning out 2,000cc engines, aka 2 liters, that are struggling to make 115 horsepower, but they charge $51,000 for them. I actually said $49,000, then I had to edit it out because I actually looked up its price again. A 1991 Mazda Miata with less displacement makes more horsepower. Isn't that weird? A Yamaha R1 engine that is half the size of the Harley makes more horsepower for basically less than half the price. Shout out to the guy who snuck the Pan America past the Harley executives, because that's really the only engine that's worth a damn in their lineup right now. Tying this back into cars, the reason I mention this is we're seeing the same issue with American car companies that are seeking asylum with Chinese auto manufacturers. I get that a lot of them probably haven't studied what happened to Harley. If any of those marketers from Ford or GM are watching, you really should not ban those Chinese cars from being sold in the US. So GM, Ford, Stellantis, do not compete in a vacuum. You have to face direct competition from China. These companies will fail to innovate as Chinese cars pull ahead of them in the coming decades if they don't acknowledge China's existence. This is true of nature even. Animals that evolve on islands tend not to be as hardened as animals on the mainland, excluding Australia, which is a massive continent-sized island. Whenever a mainland animal accidentally gets transported to a small island, even in small quantities, these invasive mainland species can wipe out entire populations of local island species in just a few years. The stiffer and more intense the mainland environment, the better and more built for competition those species were. This is true of human nature too. You cannot deny the existence of foreign competition, especially in a world that is more connected than ever in global trade. I'm not a senseless hater, by the way. I've owned several American vehicles in my life, so this is actually me speaking from experience. I'm not just crapping on American vehicles as someone who's jealous since never owned one. If you're new to the channel, hello, subscribe if you love weekly situation updates. Anyways, I like American vehicles still. I love the styling, the history, the vibe they have. I modded them, cleaned them, fixed them, tuned them, whatever. But I would be lying if I said I'm not a little bit disappointed regarding their reliability and overall build quality. According to the dealerships, I never did anything wrong. I always followed their maintenance schedule to a T. God bless the Corvette though. I've got no bad words for it. It truly is an exception, not the rule, because whether it's my Harleys or Mustangs or really a lot of other modern American cars, they are less than stellar regarding the reliability.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Regarding EUDM, I 100% already know Bugatti and Rimac will fire back. This is not something that 16 company Volkswagen conglomerate is going to take laying down. I look forward to seeing what Bugatti is going to cook up with their hybrid V16. Koenigsegg is also going to fire back. Koenigsegg will probably be the last remaining top speed focused hypercar that is still using an all gas engine now that Bugatti is a hybrid and Rimac is obviously an EV and China is also using an EV. So Koenigsegg, sing loud and proud, scream that V8's roaring heart until the very end. Rimac will obviously have to take China head on at their own game by trying to beat them with their full EV Navara R or whatever Rimac calls their next generation car. EUDM is currently still in their golden age. In fact, it might never have ended. I think they fluctuate from time to time. I think at the worst, Europe has goofy moments where they become silver aged, but I don't think Europe has ever in the past 100 or so years that cars have existed ever like deteriorated past the Bronze Age. I think especially these past 30 years, the European Union and the United Kingdom, because for the sake of simplicity for this video, I'm gonna file British cars into EUDM, alright? Sorry, Brexit lovers. Anyways, the McLaren F1 is still the fastest naturally aspirated car to this day. Big W for the United Kingdom. The Mercedes AMG 1 still holds the Nurburgring record, and hell, that's not even mentioning the constant flow of Porsches, Lamborghinis, and whatnot that are also on the Nurburgring, constantly punching each other back and forth for the record. Europe is constantly pushing the bleeding edge of technology and downforce. Most of the fastest cars in the world, be it track, top speed, have come from Europe. It's pretty funny to me how so many non-car enthusiast Americans, especially Silicon Valley hipsters and tech bros, still have no clue that Koenigsegg or Rimac even exist. These companies are like the automotive community's best kept secrets. I do think that Tesla fanboys really need to take a seat and humble themselves, because y'all need to bow down to the actual EV overlord being Rimac. I know Rimac is going to beat BYD. I've got that much faith in them. BYD's on top now, but hey, if they don't hit that 30 number quickly enough, I think Rimac can do it. They didn't join forces with Bugatti for nothing. You got this, Mate Rimac. He is 37 years old. That's only 11 years older than me. Man, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, because that man is out there doing what Elon Musk won't touch with an astronomical unit-sized pole. This man has been facing down the Chinese hypercars that have, because again, it's not just the Yang Wang. China's been making electric hypercars for quite some time now, and I'm glad that someone is staring them down and doing something about it. Also, it is really cool to see that all three of these companies are just really good friends. Like, it's a trifecta of you are my opponent, but not my enemy. They're all rivals, but still respectful towards each other's accomplishments. Game respects game, and tying this back into what I said at the start of this video, this is what I mean by you have to acknowledge the success of your opponents and competitors, because because that's what allows you to continue competing with them and, more importantly, beating them. You know your enemy better than your friends. We all know this. Apparently modern America doesn't know this, but you lose the game when you think you've won forever. I know that these mad lads are already cooking up a strategy on how to beat BYD, and that's exciting. That's absolute cinema. I'm rooting for BYD in a different way, because if they fire back, then it'll cause Bugatti to fire back too, and you'll just get a cycle of rapid technological advancement. And this is super cool that companies like Volkswagen will drop billions just to keep Bugatti on the bleeding edge of technology. That's how petty they are, or how determined they are. That's probably a better way to word it. If only Ford, GM, or Stellantis would be willing to lend even just a few $100 million to Hennessy or SSE, and these companies absolutely have the money to spare, but they're too busy penny pinching and squeezing investors and customers that, look, here we are as the United States just poking our head in once every decade and then going, woo, we're number one. And then we wave the flag when by definition, you're not number one when the other 9 years of the decade are not being held by you. And again, we're a car dependent nation. How are we losing? How are we getting out America'd as Americans by countries that aren't even car dependent? Like, for Christ's sake, stop displaying these obvious signs of jealousy and crossing our arms and being a stupid little puer turnus. Yeah, just shut up and get inside the Hennessy F5, Shinji. Anyways, that's it for this video. Like this video and share it to your Tesla owning coworker so he can be reminded of BYD and Remont's existence and who actually wears the pants in the EV community. If you enjoy automotive content, check out my other videos and subscribe for more weekly situation updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bladed Angel out.